Let's bring on someone who could provide more insight to who the Lions selected. We're going to discuss some winners and losers of the NFL draft, which we'll get to after Scott and with Scott, because I know he's got some opinions on it. Please welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Scott Bischoff, who joins the show here. Detroit Lions and NFL draft analyst at DetroitLionsPodcast.com, staff writer at FootballGuys.com, and also has a great show, him and Russell Brown. Please welcome in Scott Bischoff. Scott, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're fired up, Scott. The Lions, interesting weekend. They traded up twice in the fourth round, got some players, got Mr. Giovanni Manu out of British Columbia. I was like, who and where? So we had to kind of do some research. But Scott, now that we spent so much time covering the draft with you, all right, players, and we'll definitely get to some of these draft selections. I know the fellas want to ask you about them. Can we just start with Terion Arnold? And the Lions trade up 5 spots. We saw, what was it, the top 14 players were offensive players, and then you see Latu, first defensive player off the board, and he's a hell of a defensive player. Me and Lucas like him a lot, and Booner came along. He's an incredible player. But Brad said it, offensive draft. What do you make of the Lions getting Terion Arnold in the 20s and only trading up 5 spots to do so?
It feels like since Brad Holmes has taken over, for some reason the Lions get lucky every draft. His first draft, it was Penei Sewell being available at 7, and then Hutchinson being there at 2. And
right.
It just feels like things are going off the field. It feels like the Lions are in a good position. They're getting lucky. They did again this year with Arnold being available. It's hard to believe he was around, in a position where all they had to do is flip a 3rd-round pick to go get him. It's kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, 14 offensive players go. It just squeezes all the defensive players down, and he fits what Aaron Glenn wants to do perfectly. So it's a great fit. It's hard to say it was a great pick because it's such a no-brainer kind of a thing, but it's like putting your money on the table, playing blackjack, and getting dealt blackjack. Good job, right? So, obviously he's got to grow as a player and become a really good NFL player. But as far as a prospect goes, for what the Lions do, he's it.
How often do you think, and we had this discussion earlier too, with just drafting a corner in general, and when you draft a corner in the top 5, hell, even top 10, you expect them early on to, be your number 1 corner, at least challenge that. When you draft someone in the 20s, Scott, what's kind of the expectation for someone like Terion to come in, be maybe your second corner, and eventually take that spot over? Because the Lions have a lot of depth, and I think this is a great situation for especially a rookie corner to kind of come into with kind of vets around him. But what's a fair expectation for someone like Terion kind of translating right away into the NFL?
So, it's a really good question because you see both ends of the spectrum. You see a couple years ago, Derek Stingley goes 3rd overall to Houston, and he, it's a rough transition for him, and he's injured, and there's some stuff that just he didn't play great. Year 2 was a lot better, and then a player like Sauce Gardner, who went after Stingley, just lights it up in year 1. And has a bit of I don't want to say down year, but he didn't have the great year like he had as a rookie. But that speaks to the volatility of the position. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. You just want to do your best to sort of even all that stuff out. It's nice that the Lions have given him a soft landing in terms of they're not forcing him to go to be Jeff Okudah, right? Like, all right, you need to go out there and lock down other teams' number 1s. Lock them down. That's tough, man. That's a tough job to do. But between Carlton Davis and Amick Robertson and Arnold and everybody else in the equation there, whatever they choose to do and however they choose to make it work is good. It's nice that they're not forced to have to play him against the Justin Jeffersons of the world. But if he plays, and I think Holmes was talking about this, if he competes and plays to a level that he displaces a player like Davis as their cornerback 1, that's great. There's really no negative outcome there where you think, all right, this is not a good situation for a corner to to be joining this team. It's kind of the perfect situation. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's a hard thing to do to transition quickly as a corner.
Yeah, Scott, I want to throw this out there too. We did have this conversation in the show here, talking about Giovanni Manu and Christian Mahogany and this offensive lineman. Kind of, it felt that now they're a little more comfortable drafting some depth with that offensive line. And we do know with the Lions, that's like the bread, like the heart of this football team is it starts from the trenches, especially on the offense. Do you see where do you see the Giovanni Manu? I know a lot of people are saying that he was the hidden gem of this class, and then Christian Mahogany falling all the way to the 6. Do you see either of them kind of in the future developing into being a starter on this offensive line, or kind of where did you have them on your board here for the Lions?
So I think Mahogany could play if they can clean up some technical stuff and maybe some over-aggressive type stuff. I think he could play now. Meaning. Wow. I think he could step in. I don't think he'll start, but if you and we've seen it, injuries come up, they happen. You need depth. I don't see there's a reason why he can't step in and play to a reasonable level as a rookie. He's that good. He's physically capable. He's big enough. The way he plays fits them perfectly. He was a steal in round 6. He just was. I'm not sure why. Maybe there was an injury. That forced him to fall a little bit, but still, we're Dane Brugler of The Athletic had both he and Wingo, who I know you guys were talking about, in his top 100. So getting those guys in round 6 is just stealing. As far as Manu goes, I know that there's been some talk today about him playing right guard.
He's huge.
I wonder if they're moving. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's huge. That guy is massive. And I've never seen 6'8", 350 with no gut, Scott. No gut at all.
It's like I'm looking in the mirror, buddy. Just, one of us is really tall with no gut, and the other guy's short with, whatever.
Exactly what it is.
It's a whole other story. He is, so people are talking about him today about he opened up and said that the Lions talked about him playing right guard in year 1, or at least that's where they're seeing him. And I wonder this. I think there is a push to get him to the right side of the offensive line. I don't know that it would be reasonable or fair to this kid to just say, hey, we're going to rep you as a right tackle right away in your career, even though you've never played on the right side. It's different going from left as opposed to, kicking out, from the right side of the line of scrimmage. It's just different. Your footwork is different. So a natural couple year sort of incremental development there would be, let's rep him as a guard in year 1 so we can get him kicking off of the inside of his left foot, just kind of starting his movement that way. Because right now it's the opposite. He's kicking off with the inside of his right foot. So in year 1, we're just sort of naturally transitioning and getting his body comfortable with that. And in year 2, we're going to make it a bigger, we're going to give him more to learn. So I'm not necessarily buying that he's destined to be a guard. I think that there's potential for him to play tackle. It's just going to be incremental growth, and it's going to be a several year sort of development window for him. The first step is to get him over into the right guard position and getting him, comfortable with moving out, with his left foot, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And Scott, you came on the show about a month ago and you brought up Rakestraw pretty much before any of us did, and really anyone that I heard about. Do you like that pick, and did you expect him to fall that late?
I love the pick. I love the way he fits with what the Lions, and this has nothing to do with the his physical makeup or any of that kind of stuff. I just like the way he plays. He'll step up, he'll tackle. He's not afraid to do any of that kind of stuff. There were some corners in this class who I think didn't necessarily put themselves in position to be drafted by the Lions because they did not want to tackle, right? So that's something that you have to do if you're going to play corner for Aaron Glenn. But I like the way he plays off man coverage more than, like, I like Arnold up in your face and literally, inside your jersey running routes for you. Where I kind of like Rakestraw a little more off, where he can flip his hips and run a certain way. He's really good at that kind of stuff. I know he's slight. He's a little smaller weight wise than you'd really want. But we're talking. I think it was pick 60. Was it 61?
Yeah,
60, whatever it was, 63, whatever it was. I should know this. I think it was 61. But yeah, I mean, he's a clear value there. It's just, is his future as an outside boundary corner, or might he perhaps transition to play safety down the road? Because I think he could be a lights out safety. Yeah. It's just, he adds depth and competitiveness and all that fire to the room. And all of a sudden, this is a team that was 1 or 2 bounces, one maybe defensive stop, or perhaps even a first down away from being in the Super Bowl. And you added, and your issues were, you had Cam Sutton, trying to lock up other teams' number ones, and that didn't go well. And you had issues in your secondary, and Brad Holmes has completely turned that whole thing over. And now you have Carl Davis, you have Amick Robertson, you have these 2 guys that you just drafted. All of a sudden, it's loaded, and there's talent everywhere. I don't think there's any perfect way for it to play out, but it doesn't matter. The best group of players is going to play. This is secondarily to this is Brian Branch now, I think, moves to safety full time, which is a good thing. So the Rakestraw addition, I think, is one of those things that improves 2 positions with 1 pick. It gives you depth as a boundary corner, and playmaking and all that stuff, competitiveness, all those things. But it allows Branch to get more, to find more of a home where he can make plays. And I think that's as a in the box sort of playmaking safety, kind of a robber, or that kind of a position. So I mean, I love what they did in rounds 1 and 2. I think they got very clear value for what they do. And my assumption, and it's just an assumption, I don't know this, but if we were to see the Lions board, they probably drafted cornerbacks 1 and cornerbacks 2 for what they do, which is nuts to think about.
Yeah, I think even Brad spoke on that post-draft, and that's what he said. Yep. He's like, we never expected Terion or Enos to be there, but they were the top 2 corners on our board, and both of them, when it was time to pick, and we felt like we needed to move up for Terion and to take Enos in the second round. They were just there, so we took him. Yeah. But a guy that could potentially be joining the secondary with him, and I think, Scott, the most intriguing prospect, in my opinion, as far as what he's going to do, and I said, he's not obviously going to have the impact that Terion does. He's never going to be an elite corner, in my opinion, lead anything. But the best pound-for-pound football player in Sion Vaki, in my opinion, just because of what he can do on all 3 levels. What do you think the Lions are going to do with him?
Honestly, I think he will be their running back 3. And he'll be more a special teams player than anything on defense. That's kind of what I think they'll do. He's really, really effective with the ball in his hands. I know he didn't run a great time, but when you look at the GPS data for him, there were moments where he was in the 23 miles per hour last year. Very, very effective with the ball in his hands. Just very instinctive, and it's natural for him. So I would expect him to be kind of like backup running back, special teams ace. If you think about the new kickoff, all the new rules, he kind of fits perfectly for that. So that's kind of where I think he won't. I'm not sure that I see him playing much on the defensive side of the ball at all. It's more, running back 3, special teams, and being a really important part of things from in that way.
And Scott, too, I want to ask you, because we were going to dive into it in a little bit here, but just some winners and losers from the NFL draft. I know the Falcons got a lot of flack for the Michael Penix. Not that Michael Penix isn't worth a top 10 selection, but more so the fit there. I thought the Steelers had a hell of a draft. I believe they got your guy, Mason McCormick, who you
bastard did.
About.
So yes, I was so pissed. I was downtown with my wife when that happened, and it was like.
We thought of you immediately.
I was so pissed. It's like irrational. It's like, what does it matter what you think, you jackass? You know?
That was your guy, though, Scott.
Yeah,
that was like that was like me watching Xavier Legette go 32 overall.
You had us pissed on the live watch party when he went because you had kind of ingrained in our mind that we're like, he's a Lion at some point here.
I'm sorry.
It's failed. Okay. It's okay. What are some of your winners and losers just from over the weekend?
So the Steelers I think the Steelers had the best draft as an O-line guy. I mean, you look at Fatanu's going to play somewhere at a very high level for a long time. Zach Frazier, I think, has the look of a high level center, and then you just throw in McCormick in there, and he's going to play guard somewhere. And it's like, okay, the interior of that offensive line is fixed for a while, right? Like, they like to run the ball. They're gonna be able to run the ball. Maybe not necessarily in year one because it's always tough, but I would say 2 years from now, the Steelers' running game probably will be a pretty damn good running game. It just will be. Whoever the running back is, whoever the starting back is 2 years from now for Pittsburgh, it's probably a good fantasy pick. I don't even know who it will be. It don't matter.
Jaylen Warren.
Go ahead.
I said Jaylen Warren.
There you go. I mean, it could be him even this year. The Falcons. So it wasn't just the Penix pick. And I think that there's a way you could justify the Penix pick in a small way, and it's this. I think the Falcons are expecting to get hammered in the tampering thing. So for them, and I know he's 24, and this is the problem with this argument, even as it comes out of my mouth. But let's just play pretend for a minute. The Falcons, I don't know, are expecting to have their first round pick next year because of tampering with Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins plays to a reasonable level of football over the next 2 years, I don't think the Falcons are in a situation where they're going to be able to have a quarterback fall to them that they like. It would mean they would have to use serious draft capital to go up and get one. Let's say in the event Kirk Cousins just decides I'm done with football, kind of thing. Penix is right there for them. They love him. I can understand why they do. And if you just throw the idea together that, all right, we don't have a first round pick next year because the NFL is going to take it from us, and we're going to be good enough that we're not going to be in position, or we're not going to draft early enough 2 years from now. Let's take our quarterback now so that way we're prepared and we can just move on seamlessly when Cousins does retire. I think that makes more sense, and it's the only thing that makes sense in that pick. Now, that doesn't justify why you don't trade back and try to get something. You go back to 10 and get a fourth round pick. Okay, that's cool. And you could take them there. I think they wanted to stay in front of the Raiders, though, because it was one of those things where I think the Raiders were going to take Penix if he were available. So I don't know if that makes any sense or gives you any sense of like, okay, I can get behind that a few percent, because there's really no way to get behind that pick all the way. It just was such a strange pick, but it wasn't just those. The tackle they took early in round 2 was a reach. They had an off day. They had an off draft. The Falcons did.
To Scott, I want to kind of circle back to the Lions here. I know one of the biggest things, and I think a lot of fans were kind of questioning. If you were to question anything Brad did, which is hard to sometimes, is the whole edge situation, the defensive line thing that, you came out of this draft with no edge. So kind of two-part question. Did you think they should have addressed that and kind of got an edge at some point if there was one available that they missed on? And then also we did speak about the Mekhi Wingo pick there in the 6th round before, and I think he ends up being like the Kirby Joseph of this year, to where he ends up being an absolute steal, and he actually gives you some production. Where do you stand on Mekhi Wingo as well, kind of the Lions bringing him in? Especially
I'm with you. I mean, I think he makes the team, and I think he gives them something. I think he gives you something that you don't have, which is powerful interior disruption. I know Levi can do that kind of stuff, but it's more with his quickness, where Wingo does it in a different way. I think he's more physical player. He's smaller. He's 6 foot and he's 283 pounds. But he's got a really good first step. He's got a good get off. He's really good with his hands. The nice thing about him, as opposed to Onwuzurike, so I wouldn't necessarily think that his draft addition means something negative for Onwuzurike, is that I think the Lions can use him as an edge player at times in certain formations, just like they did with LSU, because he is quick enough and powerful enough to collapse the pocket. So he can do those kind of things when you go into like NASCAR looks, when, if you want to condense Hutchinson and say Pascal or Kaminsky inside to get more quickness on the interior, he could be a player that you would stack on the edge and still, get enough pass rush there, but also some physicality. It's just an interesting way of doing things. So I think he was a really good pick. It's crazy to think that he was there. He's a really good player. You could see him flash all the time on film. All the time. He looked like a guy who was really difficult to block because of his hands and his ability just to kind of be underneath an offensive lineman's pads.
Yeah, and Scott, the Vikings obviously had a pretty good first round picking up JJ and Dallas Turner. Do you think those guys will be able to pick up the speed fast and fill the shoes of Danielle Hunter and Kirk Cousins? How do you think the Vikings' outlook for the next season looks?
Why, Scott? Why Dallas Turner? I mean,
okay.
Why was he
I
there?
don't know that Dallas Turner is going to fill Hunter's shoes. Like, right? I don't know that he's going to do it both in the short term or the long term. I just, Danielle Hunter is a fantastic pass rusher. He always was. I think when I looked at Turner, I thought Turner was more of a Baltimore Ravens type linebacker, outside linebacker, like a guy you'd want to play in a 3-4, walked up over the edge, kind of like TJ Watt type of player. He's like 245 pounds. So, he's a good player. And yeah, I don't love the way the draft played out as far as being a Lions fan. I'm not a big fan of what the Bears did, I don't like Caleb Williams and Romo Duns being, in Chicago. I'm not a fan of that.
Jeff just said that's the next Joe Montana and Jerry Rice.
I did not. I do. Hey, Scott, I do think Caleb's going to be a hell of a player. I got a lot of flack for that, but here it's a Lions show. But I can't deny it, Scott.
It's suddenly going to be a division that's pretty loaded. But McCarthy is he's a super interesting. It seems to be polarizing prospect. I don't quite know why. I would gamble. If I were putting down a little bit of money right now on rookie of the year, it'd be him.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and again, I don't know that he's going to play like right away. I don't know if he's going to beat out Darnold. He should, but that's the luxury of where they're at, is that they don't have to force that. So if Darnold plays for, 5 or 6 games and then hands the keys over to JJ, I think that makes some sense. And then in which case I would not make that bet, but you know what I'm saying? It's, of all the places, he's the most, of all the quarterbacks, I think he's the most ready to go. Caleb Williams is going to be interesting what they do in Chicago. I know he's going to play right away, and whether they can get things going in a positive direction or not, we'll see. But with the other ones, I don't know what I would expect Drake May to do in New England. I wouldn't expect it to be great things. And Daniels, I think, will be an effective runner. But outside of that, I think JJ is the clear of the 4 quarterbacks. He may be the clear winner. I should say of the 6 quarterbacks, he might be the clear winner.
Scott, another pick that just made me just like, oh, like it just hurts to watch. And I'm sure you felt very similar on this, honestly, because of how we stood at wide receivers in the first round. And the fact that he went to the 49ers is Ricky Pearsall, now going to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. What was your reaction to that pick?
It wasn't a good one.
Oh,
I mean, it wasn't. He was one of the players I was really, really really wanting the Lions to draft in round 2. But, you know, there was a question a few minutes ago that I did not answer, and I apologize. It was about the edge position. We have to remember that free agency is not done. I would expect the Lions to be in on wide receivers, like a player like Tyler Boyd. I don't know the names, right? But there's a bunch of players available. I would think that they're in the safety market as well. It wouldn't make sense for any of these receivers or safeties to sign with a team, you know, on these short deals, knowing that a draft was happening, and it's like, okay, you know, I'm Tyler Boyd, and I just signed with the Bears, and the Bears just drafted Romo Duns. Okay, well, I guess I don't really have to worry about playing too much this year, kind of stuff. So
Right.
I think that, you know, there's a window for the Lions to go address and go find, you know, a receiver, a safety, an edge defender that can come in and bolster what they already have. Because that's really where we are now, is we're talking about the margins and getting a little bit of help, because that's what Holmes and Campbell have done, is taken in 4 years, taken this team from what I would consider was a pretty horrible team post Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn. And now you're looking at, you know, hey, if you want to play for a team that's going to compete to win the Super Bowl, come to Detroit. Okay. It's crazy to think about it, but that's where we are.
Super Bowl champs.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're at now. And the roster, certainly, when you got guys that are first-round picks that might not play, it's a good thing, Scott. And we appreciate you. There you go, Scott Bischoff. We love having him.
Legend.
And by the way, we always say this, we love having guests on that make us think. That Manu point about him playing right guard, about learning how to adjust to the right side before he gets eventually kicked out to right tackle, because today we already know he's getting paid top tackle money. Like, he's going to be your future left tackle at some point. I didn't even think about that. So that's a great point by Scott. You could check out more of Scott, of course. He is doing his thing, of course, on Detroit Lions. Podcast.com, him and Russell Brown, who we got to get Russ on. I know he's been a busy man.
Yeah.
You and Russ, I'm an avid listener. You guys are crushing. And he's also a staff writer at footballguys.com. Until next time, Scott, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Scott.
Have me on, guys. You guys do well.
All right, you as well. There you go, Scott Bischoff. Hey, he's a great guest. I love having him on. He definitely, yeah, he does.